On this week's episode of Vets and Real Estate Podcast, we're going to hear from Sarah Olivares, former Army soldier turned real estate professional. Let's learn about her journey and stay tuned. All right, welcome to our next episode of the Vets and Real Estate Podcast. I am joined by Sarah Olivares, former Army soldier turned real estate professional. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining us. So tell us about what you did while you're in the Army.
Yeah, so the official title is geospatial engineer.
Sounds fancy.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I was like, oh, space? What? Let's do it. I'm all about it. And was not the case. Yeah.
Kind of the opposite.
Quite the opposite. Much more earth-based. Did a lot of map making and just a lot of data analyzing and compiling that for commanders to make their decision on the battlefield. That's kind of the gist of what it is. Mm-hmm.
So why, it sounds like an interesting career.
Yeah.
Why make the switch into real estate? What was that kind of impetus to say, let's get out of the Army, let's go do something else?
Yeah, you know, to back it up a little bit, I was actually in the National Guard. So
Okay.
a little part-timer, little weekend warrior.
That's fine.
All good, my boys out there. But, you know, being behind a computer was not for me. And being part-time, I was exposed to more of the civilian world too. And at the time, I was project managing for a construction company. And I loved being at the job site. Do I want to stay in or do I want to be here? And so I found myself needing to make that decision. So I eventually just said, nope, go ahead and exit. And then I went to the job sites and I loved it ever since. Now that was about 2018, and to 2019 I got my real estate license.
Okay.
To just so we can list our own properties. We did a lot of residential flips, the higher end ones, some of the lower end ones, and commercial finish outs as well. And so I kind of fell into it a little bit, but
Like
once
most of us.
yeah, like most of us, right? Yeah, totally. And but once I found more of the commercial side, that resonated more with me because I love dealing with business owners. That's who I was dealing with before.
Okay.
And it just makes much more sense. I never really succeeded too much on the residential side. It's not me to be salesy. It's more of a, how can I be of service and what is that end solution? How can we get you there? And coming from a solutions-based motive, I think that makes much more sense to problem solve and be of service to other people.
Yeah, you're not really a salesperson, you're a consultant.
No. Yeah, consulting, yes.
Yeah, that
100%.
makes perfect sense. And I think for some people that don't have the sales personality,
Definitely not a salesperson.
having that idea of you're coming with value and consulting makes it,
Yes.
I don't know, it's a difference in mindset, but it really does, I don't know, it comes across differently.
Yes, it does. I agree. Yeah, that's what I did. I did it at the division level. Tons of officers everywhere. So I'm kind of used to dealing with those high caliber individuals, and not saying that, you know, lower enlisted is not.
What are you
But
trying
these,
to say? I got you. No, I know what you mean. I know what you mean.
but yeah, they're just, you know, it's much a different atmosphere, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. I think I'm right where I needed to be.
So what was that point where you said, okay, I want to go get my license? What did you do from there? Were you looking for GI Bill opportunities? Were you just going to say, hey, I'm going to go do it myself?
Oh man, I did it myself.
Okay.
Yeah, I did it myself. The GI Bill, I actually used that towards school.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't do it because I know that SABOR, and from the San Antonio area, SABOR actually works in line with the GI Bill, so that's pretty awesome. But I just said, rip the Band-Aid off, go to Champions.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
And so you sat down and went through the classes, and then what was that next step after that? Did
Next
you already have a
step-
brokerage in mind? Did you already
You know,
have
I
things kind of
didn't.
figured out?
I
or-
didn't. I did not have anything figured out. It was whoever was there at, yeah, God.
Fair enough. Fair
Yeah,
enough.
and so I had done a year at that brokerage, found that, you know, okay, so this is, during my first transaction, and it was, of course, a house at the time, and this was, luckily it was through my sphere, so it wasn't like just some rando off the street. You know, my first brokerage, they said that they were going to be there for me, but when push came to shove, during that time, they were not. I had to reach out to another agent from another brokerage, my mom's ex-agent, and or maybe could be current agent. He's fantastic, still does real estate to this day. Comes from service, AJ Regaldes, actually. And I called AJ. He wasn't expecting anything in return, but I'm like, how do I navigate this? And he was there. That's huge. And so coming from the military, and I'm a big SOP person, at least it has like some pretty strong guidelines. Yeah, there's some tweaks along the way, not a big deal to roll with it. But coming into real estate, there was nothing like that. It's like, oh, here's some contracts, but what goes into a deal? How do you go and find these deals? You know, all of these different pillars, they come into one. It could be intimidating for some if they're used to structure. Yeah.
No, I think that's fair. I remember basic training. I know you went in a little after I did, but don't me like that. Thanks. So I know that when I was in, we had that smart book. I don't know if you guys had that too. That big old thick little book that was like 3x5 index card, maybe a little bigger than that. And like you had to read that. If you were downtime, drill was on you about not reading your smart book through that entire time. And it really did. It gave you all the basic knowledge of you're going to throw a grenade. Here's what you're going to do. Like it was every little bit of what you'd have to do. And you're right. A lot of real estate brokerages, or at least you come in, like you take the test, but then do you use anything from the test? Do you really dive into that? So for you, you really wanted something that was almost like that smart book that here's what to do. Here's the steps. Here's the process.
A little bit of a flow, right? And kind of breaking it down. Not every deal is the same.
Sure.
Some sort of foundation would have been good.
Okay.
And not having bought a house myself prior, how am I going to go and sell a house if I've never bought one and went through the process myself? It was a little bit of a struggle.
Okay. So after you made it through, or did you close the transaction?
Yes, I did. Yes, thank God. Yes.
Right. So what did you do after that then? You got that first transaction. You realized you may not have gotten the support that you were hoping for. What was the next steps? What did you look at from there?
You know, I kept managing projects and listing those properties, but I think it was about into 2020 to 2021, there was someone from my sphere who needed a third location for their jewelry store. Okay. And I was like, and of course they wanted to help me out in getting paid in a different way. Like, okay, cool, this is great. So that was my first taste of commercial real estate. And boy, it was an experience. But because I knew him so well and his product, I knew where he would be able to succeed. And he's right there at Culebra in 1604. There's, I don't know, like 4 or 5 other jewelry stores in that main kind of 1 miler. He's been open for about 2 years now. And their sales are more than their Stone Oak location and their Fair Oaks location. It's like, man, is there something to this?
Yeah. So for those not familiar with San Antonio, those are both much higher income producing areas,
Yes.
whereas Culebra 1604 is moderately a little above moderate. So that's interesting. They got better sales in those areas rather than where you would traditionally expect jewelry to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And just hearing that was a little bit of validation, like, okay, maybe there's something to this in helping business owners find their next location or even their first location, but I really got to know that product. And so that kind of drove me to what is commercial real estate and all the different asset classes. I got to know it all. But at the same time, though, just going with it, taking action. And I would say, what is it? I think the CIA teaches something like excellence through execution.
Okay.
And in that the end plan will always be there, but through you just executing and you just going with it, it will always evolve and you'll always learn new things, what you should and shouldn't do. But as long as you keep going, everything's going to be okay. So, I mean, so early on in my real estate career, I wish I would have taken more action instead of just learning like everything that I thought I needed to know and just rolling with it.
So you may be focused on more education, not any practical, more analysis by paralysis type situation. Okay.
Yeah, I was doing a lot of that.
Fair enough. So you've done both residential and commercial.
Yes.
So what is the difference? I know when I came in, I was going to be a house flipper. Like
yeah.
that was it, right?
Oh,
I was
were
gonna be a
you?
house
Like
flipper. That
everyone
was
else.
it, right? And then all of a sudden, I got lucky. Had a fraternity brother hire me. All of a sudden, started managing commercial properties. Like, oh my gosh, people actually sell shopping centers and office buildings and lease these out. I had no idea.
Cool. So cool.
But I had no idea.
Yeah.
So I assumed you had to do something in houses. So what's the difference? I mean, you've done both. What is the difference in, I guess, the residential side versus the commercial side?
There's a huge side. There's a total difference, almost night and day. I know some folks, they're like, hey, I don't want to do residential because the transactions can be a little bit more emotional. I would argue that sometimes commercial could be a little bit too, especially if you have those attorneys that there's their first office and it has to feel right. And hey, I get it, buddy. I totally get it. But for some, with certain clients, it's much more numbers based, based on facts. And that's how I like to operate, is based on facts, not, I can't work with this because the kitchen color. I have a best friend. Sometimes she does that. She's like, hey, Sarah, you sold us this house. Now they're building a school next door. I'm like she's kind of upset about it. I'm like, hey, what, why are you so upset? Like, well, the traffic. I'm like, well, when do you go to work? Oh, between like noon or 2, and I get back home at 8. Girl, you're not even dealing with no traffic. So what is this? God, I love her. But with commercial, it's like, okay, like, hey, I need this traffic count. I need these things. A lot of business owners, they already know what they're looking for. Now go find the real estate. And it also helps when you already have that relationship with those building owners and other brokers in town, and coming with solutions to these folks. Now, I feel a little bit more fulfilled doing that than the residential side. So with residential, sometimes you'll have your niches in the neighborhoods and different things like that. And hey, my proximity to work, I don't want to be on the road too much. And hey, great school districts. Okay, great. Like, that's all fine and dandy, but I need something a little bit more substance. Commercial real estate seemed a little bit more challenging to me, in that it's similar to, I wouldn't say similar to the medical field, but just broad, right? Oh, I'm in real estate. Okay, well, you break it down. This or this, residential, commercial. Oh my God, there's so many different asset classes and different kinds of clients, and I see it as a challenge in the best kind of way, versus residential. Here's this kitchen. You like it? Like, look at this floor plan. It feels good. Like, I'm not trying to make transactions happen off of feeling. Okay, I'm trying to get it off of facts. Does this work or not?
Now, you said something interesting in all that, is that residential didn't fulfill you, where commercial did. I think many that are transitioning out of the military, I think some of that struggle is sense of purpose. Coming out of the military is vastly different. Suddenly you were part of a team. You were serving something much bigger than you.
Yeah.
And then
Here's the world. Yeah.
now what do you do?
Now what do you do?
So how did you go through that process of figuring out that residential really wasn't kind of fulfilling that desire, and commercial was just doing that first commercial deal, and you were like, boom, this is
where it's
it?
at. Yeah.
Or was there more of a process of like, I don't really like the houses, and then seeking something more?
I tend to go not with the crowd. It's just who I am. So
Fair.
when they're like, oh, you're a realtor, and no, I'm a real estate agent that does commercial real estate. I guess the residential side didn't quite fulfill me because that's a great question. I'm trying to really think about that one. The commercial side really just made much more sense to me, as far as, again, going to the solutions-based type decisions. It's like, okay, great. Like, we got this for you. The residential, that's great. You live in a house, then what? Like, that's it. And we're done. Versus the commercial real estate, it's, hey, I want these locations. And of course, that's where I started out, was with retail. Now I'm trying to move into other asset classes. But I think with commercial real estate, it's a different kind of relationship, especially with business owners. You are supporting them, versus like a house, it's in their family. Like, oh, that's cool that you get to see, like, live in your little neighborhood, and you it's work and play, and maybe I'll see you in 5 years, 10 years, whatever. Versus the commercial side, it's okay, like, this is our plan. This is our vision, and they have a mission behind it. And I'm like, oh, that's fucking great. Let's do it. Okay, so where do you see yourself with in 5 years? How many locations do you want to open up? Or what do you see your plan for the future? And I like being a part of that in other folks' mission.
All right, that's fair. So you mentioned that you started in retail, but then there was other assets. So what, I guess in commercial real estate, what are those other opportunities? I mean, retail is a retail center. I get that. An office building is an office building, but I guess what else is commercial? What else could you be, or what else are you exploring, trying to specialize in?
Well, right now I'm trying to specialize in the more industrial and office products.
Okay.
So industrial, because there's a lot of opportunity right now. I'm not saying that things are flying off the shelf, but it's definitely desired in this area. And office, maybe a little bit less desired, but I see it as more of an opportunity. So get to know more about that right now. Retail's cool. I mean, some folks, they're like, oh, I love retail because I get to kind of shape the community and the environment that we're in, which is totally true. Totally true. I totally get that. But I kind of want to shift gears and focus elsewhere. We're trying to get in at over by the Dominion area right now, and it's slow rolling. But as soon as they're done with this one, they're ready to move on to the next medical clinic. So that's why I'm like, hey.
So you're saying that you enjoy the industrial side of things,
Yeah.
but you're looking at maybe opportunities in office that could be coming around.
Right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
What is it about retail that just wasn't as exciting for you?
Great question. I am still in between in the interim because that's what I'm familiar with. I'll still entertain people
Sure.
and help people out. Find those locations, no biggie. But it's not where my focus is. Now, if I get referred business and they're like, "Hey, I want to do some sort of retail," we can work with that.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But I won't. But this is the other thing too, is that I know what I don't know, right? So I won't do restaurants. I mean, I'm sure there's probably not too much of a difference, equipment, different things like that. Certain finish out requirements. I totally get that, but it just like, okay, that's cool. Like it's not as attractive
Gotcha.
to me. So there's some things that I'll maybe refer out. I'll stick to what I know right now and try and go hard in the paint with that and get results and not be too much of a generalist.
Fair enough. And I think, what the saying is, the riches are in the niches, right? That the more you know and the deeper that knowledge goes, you can really become a true consultant. Like you were saying, that really fits, is the deeper that knowledge is, the more experience you have in that product type, you really can be that expert and really stand out. Much different than somebody who, as you mentioned, a generalist, somebody who's doing everything.
Right.
Can be different.
It can be. And, I will say this, you have to start somewhere, right?
Sure.
And sometimes some of us are generalists until you find like, oh, not so much this, or, oh man, I really love doing this. I think that I would not be able to service my client enough if I don't know enough about the subject. And so that's why I really can agree with folks who really want to specialize and get more into niche areas.
Awesome. That's my journey too. I started off in retail. I was like, this is kind of cool. All right. And then I realized maybe not for me. And then I started kind of getting thrown into medical office and then started building my career that way. So, it was kind of a similar trajectory now, a few years down the road from where you are now, but kind of that same thing where I started retail, understood it, and then started growing from there. It's, I don't know, I think the market kind of dictates some of that as well, right?
Yeah.
Most of my business has been in office, and nobody comes to the office anymore, right? So
Right, not as much.
now your business shifts a little bit,
Yeah.
and I could say kind of being flexible, especially in this industry, is certainly helpful. Have you kind of seen the same thing? It's
That
just
is
kind of
so true.
flexibility?
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, I've seen that.
I guess from your time in the National Guard and
Yes.
moving in, what were some of the things that you felt like you just nailed? That if somebody would like, how do I be like Sarah one day, that you're like, I did this and I killed it?
I would say ask questions and approach things with an eyes wide open. That's really all I could say. I've done a lot of mess ups along the way. I'm trying to recall something that I've done right, although we are our biggest critic. We
Sure,
are our
fair
biggest
enough.
critic. Yeah.
Okay, so then I mean, and that's fair. It's kind of on the spot to ask you, what are you awesome at?
what
You're
are you awesome at? Like, oh, I will say now though, something that I've learned that is so crucial is time management and prioritizing the things that you'll see in return. And it could be financially, it could be something health-wise, it could be more of mindset. Personally, if you knew me, that girl's out on the trail, outdoors. She loves being outdoors. So if that's going to fill your cup to come back the next day or later on in the day and like, let's hit it hard again, do that. So time management, key.
So you're kind of hitting on kind of that work-life balance, that time management side of things. I mean, have you gotten to the point where you're not? You said getting on the trail, right? Have you gotten to the point where you've neglected that and then learned from it?
You know, recently, yes. I was a little bit in a funk last week. I was like, what is going on with me? I haven't been out on the trail. Took some time, little mental break a few days ago, and that's what it was. I don't know what it was. But I was like, fuck it, go to the trail. Go do a little weighted vest, kind of go after it.
Yeah.
And after that, all that little hard work, putting yourself through, feel good. I know sometimes that's what fills my cup. And so coming back the next day, it's like, I know who you are. Girl, it's going to be fine. You're good. So yeah, having that work-life balance, I think that's, some folks don't believe in that, but I think that it is true. I mean, some folks are made a different way. They're going hard in the paint all day long. Totally cool. I like to kind of take a little mental break, and for me, it's outdoors.
So, and that's, I think that's one thing that veterans struggle with a little bit as well, because we come from the military, it is, you get the mission done, everything else is second.
Yeah.
That's all we do. And I remember when I got out of the service, like I was the last person in the office because my day wasn't done.
Right.
So I don't go home till the day's done. And I don't know, I mean, at least listen to you, that doesn't sound like maybe it's healthy in the short term, but in the long term, may not be. I don't know, had you had a better balance when you're in the service, or did you kind of find that same thing while you're in service and then coming out?
I had it similarly. For me, it's how can we be most effective, right? And don't get me wrong, there has been times where I'm like, this product has to get done, it has to get done. But really, where do your values lie, and what matters most to you? And if it's family, well, you want to see those kids or your partner, your spouse, for quite a while because they depend on you, right? So if you're over here working, never really totally around, yeah, you're providing for them, okay. I mean, maybe it works for some people, but in the grand scheme of things, I think it doesn't. And, oh, by the way, you're just a number and you're replaceable, but you're not replaceable with your family.
That's fair.
I think that makes a difference.
No, I think that's fair. And I know that was part of my struggle why I was like, maybe I'll get out of the service, was I watched too many of my soldiers have first birthdays via video, or first words via video, or first steps, or high school graduations, or like those big milestones that you want to be. And I know for me, that was part of the reason why I was like, maybe this military thing, and I feel guilty about it sometimes, right? That I'm being selfish instead of selfless and all that, but you're also trying to provide for family. And it's a tough balance. And even coming out of the military, trying to still find that balance, even in a professional career, post-military can be a struggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it kind of goes back again to what matters most to you, right? Some people might think it's lazy if you're not working like 20 hours a day or something like that. But hey, if you get your fucking tasks done early in the morning, the rest of the day you can put out fires. The rest of the day you have whatever else that you can work on. It doesn't have to be such a long checklist that you're overwhelming yourself. What actually really matters? And if I was effective at that, everything else, like it could just be anything.
So you've shared kind of what you've eventually done right. Maybe that's probably the better way to put it. It sounds terrible saying it that way. Right, But so if you had that mulligan, if you can look back and you could say, hey, Sarah, in 2019, you're getting ready to do this.
Yeah.
Don't do this or don't do that. What would be that advice you give yourself kind of looking back just a handful of years ago?
Prioritize, manage your time wisely, and take action. Those are the three things that I would do.
So prioritize your day.
Prioritize
your
those
motives,
things that matter to you most, And you have to really sit down and think about that. And if it's your health, then it's your health. If it's, cold calling, then it's cold calling. Because that thing leads to something else and other opportunities. Sure. So I would say prioritize, and inside that kind of, time management, but also take action. I would overthink a lot of things and what could be in the no, none of it matters. None of it fucking matters. And oh, by the way, no one's going to provide for you. You have to provide for you. Go out and get it.
No, I think that's totally fair, because so many of us in the real estate world, we eat what we kill, right?
Yeah.
We're in commission roles. Mm-hmm. Go out there, and if you're not working, you're not doing those things, then, you're hungry.
Yeah.
And maybe not just physically hungry, but like you may not be fulfilled. You're not fulfilling those goals. You're not doing those things. So that's great. And I think what you're saying about seasons, or what you're kind of saying about priorities, I think it kind of alluded to seasons. Like early on, you're single, you're trying to set that foundation. Maybe you are working 20 hours a day.
Yeah, absolutely. And those priorities always change.
Sure.
Yeah, your goals, they always change, ever evolving. And that's good. Keeps things spicy, keeps things interesting.
Sure. So do you sit down and say, okay, once a quarter I'm going to relook at my goals, or just kind of like, eventually you kind of jump into like, my goals have changed?
I would say about every 6 months.
Is it like on the calendar you're going to sit down and do it, or is it just kind of
more of like a
organic?
It's about summertime. Yeah. All right.
Okay.
What are we doing? What are we doing with our life? Are we on the right track?
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, anything else, if you had somebody that was coming out of the military and was looking at commercial real estate, looking to go into that side of the business, what would be your advice to them as they are, I've got a year left active duty or guard, I've got a year left, I'm going to make that transition, I'm going to go into commercial real estate, what do I do now?
I would say if they've already made the decision to go into commercial real estate, remember your why, because there's going to be times that you're like, why the fuck am I doing this? Because it's hard. It's an odd transition, but not impossible, because there's so many other opportunities out there involving commercial real estate, as far as like syndicates, different people that you'll meet. Those relationships that you've made in the military, stay with those, keep those up and make additional relationships while you're in commercial real estate. And you meet so many different people. That's why I love this industry. Also, just like how you had a mission in big Army, big DOD, remember that you're trying to be of service to whomever it is that is on the other side of that client agreement. And you're doing this not only for you, but for them. And it goes back to that why. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this for yourself because you want to make some money? That's cool. That's good. Grind your teeth. And eventually some folks will fall out, because it's not all only about that. It's really big on, this industry is big on relationships as well.
No, I would completely agree that, especially in commercial real estate, even in a large town like San Antonio, there's like 800 of us.
Yeah.
And you're like, wow, 800 is a lot of people, but
it's really not. Put
really
those 800 people in a room and it's really not. It's not a lot of people.
And if you do something wrong or unethical or something like that, it's quick to
self-policing community. This industry is.
I know you and I've had conversations. Hey, do you know so and so? Oh yeah, I do know him. Oh, what do you think about that? Well, watch out on X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. And you're exactly right. If your why is not in line and you're not being of service to your clients, absolutely.
Yeah. A lot of folks will see right through it. The brokers, other industry people, and even your clients. So, and out of all of that, again, going back to the SOPs and having some sort of foundation, after all the questions that you've asked, I guess find a mentor, someone who can guide you, and vet them, and of course they'll probably vet you too if they're worth something, and kind of just be eyes wide open approach. That's what I would say, and then from there, have a business plan. Yeah.
All right. That's all great advice. I wish there was somebody would have told me all that when I first started.
Me too.
So, but thank you so much for your time and being on here. And we hope that, the viewers absolutely get some value out of this. And of course, I'm sure that there'll be some comments in the message feeds and those kind of things as well that, we may come back and ask you some of those questions as they come back around. Who knows? Maybe there's a part 2 of all the top FAQs that we get all from the comments as well. But thank you so much for your time, Sarah, and thank you for sharing your story.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.